Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to unpack the absolutely astonishing rise of DeepSeek. We'll be looking at the hidden hardware powering its latest breakthroughs, the somewhat secret strategies it uses to bypass global restrictions, and of course the massive geopolitical strings attached to its success. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so let's dive into this massive contradiction that currently has both Wall Street and Washington completely on edge. A little over a year after first shaking up the AI world, DeepSeek just dropped its V4 Flash and V4 Pro models. They're out there calling it the most powerful open-source platform on the market, which is a direct challenge to heavyweights like OpenAI and Anthropic. But you gotta wonder, how exactly is a company operating under a heavy international tech sanctions pulling this off?
Well, a big part of the answer lies in the sheer scale of what they've managed to build. The new V4 series features a context window of 1 million tokens. To put 1 million tokens into perspective, we are talking about entire code bases or incredibly massive documents being processed in just a single prompt. And to keep track of all that data without losing the plot, they use a clever setup called a hybrid attention architecture, which essentially helps the AI remember queries perfectly, even during really extended conversations. Now, to get that kind of raw reasoning power on the cheap, DeepSeek uses a fascinating technique known as mixture of experts. Basically, out of their massive 1 trillion parameter system, it selectively activates a tiny subnetwork, only about 37 billion parameters for any given task. It's like having a giant company, but only calling on the exact right specialist when you need them, which drastically lowers computing costs. This is a huge deal, especially when you consider that US tech giants are forecasted to spend a staggering $650 billion on AI infrastructure by 2026. DeepSeek is kind of proving that just throwing money at the problem isn't the only way to win.
And this reveals a really clear strategic split. DeepSeek actually boasts higher performance than models like OpenAI's GPT 5.2 in standard coding and reasoning tests. But they openly admit they are still 3 to 6 months behind the absolute cutting edge. The thing is, they aren't chasing absolute peak performance. Their main focus is fundamental cost reduction, designing the V4 to run on much cheaper infrastructure. Which, of course, brings us to the elephant in the room: how an underdog built a world-class model without legal access to the world's best hardware.
Section 2. The Banned Chip Controversy.
So how did they get the hardware? Well, according to a senior US official, DeepSeek trained their latest model using NVIDIA's most advanced chip, the Blackwell, which is strictly banned for export to China. The belief is that these chips were smuggled in and piled up in a massive data center cluster over in Inner Mongolia. On top of that, DeepSeek reportedly used a technique called distillation. This means they basically used older, more powerful AI models built by Western companies like Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, and xAI to evaluate and sort of transfer knowledge over to their newer model.
Now, the US Department of Commerce outright bans Blackwell shipments to China. But honestly, the timeline is a bit of a flip-flopping mess. Back in August, President Trump allowed a lightweight version of the older H200 chip to be sold, then later revoked it, then allowed it again in December, though it still remained bogged down by bureaucratic restrictions. And all the while, DeepSeek just totally bypassed the entire debate by utilizing those smuggled Blackwells.
This situation has completely fractured Washington. On one side, you have figures like White House AI advisor David Sachs and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang arguing that these bans just hurt American companies and actually encourage domestic Chinese competitors like Huawei to catch up. But on the other side, foreign policy hawks argue that strict bans are absolutely essential and non-negotiable to prevent these chips from aiding China's military and threatening US dominance.
But former White House national security official Saif Khan brings up a really great point here. While the smuggling is definitely alarming, the fact that DeepSeek has to rely on smuggled goods proves there is a severe shortfall in China's domestically produced AI chips. I mean, they wouldn't smuggle if they could just buy locally, right? And they certainly know they can't rely on smugglers forever.
Which brings us to our next chapter, building custom AI hardware.
To really understand DeepSeek's long-term strategy to permanently break free from these geopolitical constraints, we need to quickly look at the 2 stages of AI computing. Stage 1 is training. That's crunching vast amounts of data to teach the model, and this is absolutely NVIDIA's stronghold. Stage 2 is inference. This is when the model is actually running and generating answers for you. Inference takes less raw power than training, and it's actually the fastest growing segment in AI computing right now. While DeepSeek is quietly hiring engineers to design its very own custom silicon specifically for this inference stage.
If you look at the domestic landscape, you can see why this is a massive shift.
Thanks to U.S. sanctions, Huawei has captured about half of China's $50 billion AI chip market. But DeepSeek's move to build in-house chips, along with similar moves by tech giants Alibaba and Baidu, directly threatens Huawei's dominance. DeepSeek is making it very clear. They want to reduce their reliance on both NVIDIA abroad and Huawei at home.
But look, making a custom chip is not exactly a weekend project. It requires years of development and massive capital investment. More importantly, manufacturing is a major hurdle. U.S. restrictions block Chinese companies from accessing the world's most advanced foreign chip foundries, and they heavily restrict access to high-bandwidth memory, which is a crucial component for any competitive AI chip.
And that leads us to our final section, the hidden cost, censorship. Technical marvels and hardware wars are fascinating, for sure, but we really have to look at the end-user experience. A recent study published in the journal Peneus Nexus reveals the hidden societal costs attached to this technology. Researchers compared how different AI models answered over 100 politically sensitive questions. And when they asked about the status of Taiwan, ethnic minorities, or pro-democracy activists, Chinese chatbots behaved very differently from their Western counterparts. For example, when asked about China's internet censorship, the so-called Great Firewall, the bots literally wouldn't even mention the firewall. They just simply stated that authorities manage the internet in accordance with the law. And the study's findings are pretty stark. The researchers flagged answers where the bot outright refused to answer or gave inaccurate information, while Western models had a refusal and an accuracy rate of under 10%, and some Chinese models like Baichuan and ChatGLM hovered around 8%, DeepSeek's inaccuracy and refusal rate hit a staggering 22%. That is more than double the ceiling seen in models developed outside of China.
The crucial takeaway here is the subtle danger of this kind of technology. You see, unlike an old-school blocked website where you get a giant error screen, an AI chatbot just smoothly deflects, apologizes, or changes the subject. The researchers warned that this makes censorship incredibly hard for the average user to even detect, allowing the AI to quietly shape perceptions and decision-making without you ever really noticing.
And you know, this isn't just an accident of their training data. While some conversational differences absolutely stem from China's unique cultural and linguistic context, there's a strict legal mandate at play here. Regulations introduced in 2023 require Chinese AI companies to uphold core socialist values. Algorithms that could cause social mobilization actually have to be submitted for state security assessments and cannot subvert national sovereignty. It's baked right into the rules.
DeepSeek really is a genuine technological marvel. I mean, they've built an incredibly efficient, world-class AI while navigating crippling chip bans and some intensely complex geopolitics. But their story leaves us with a really vital question to ponder. As these hyper-capable yet heavily curated AI models become a cheap, integral part of our daily global lives, will objective truth survive the crossfire of trade wars and state control? It is definitely something we all need to be thinking about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.